Here we go now. No, you're totally fine. Okay, so welcome to the Ramsey County Board Workshop. Today's workshop will be a continued presentation on Ramsey, Washington Recycling and Energy Joint Activities 2026-2027 budgets. This is a courtesy reminder that this board workshop is recorded and it is live streamed on the Zoom webinar. There will be no votes taken during this workshop. So let's start with introductions of commissioners and presenters around the table and then the rest of the room. Kelly Miller, Ramsey County Commissioner, District 7.
Sam Hansen, Director of Programs, Arnie.
Trista Martinson, Executive Director, Arnie.
Sam Hall, Facility Director.
Lynn Becker, County Manager.
Rena Moran, Commissioner District 4.
Mary Jo McGuire, Commissioner District 2.
Tara Jevon Singh, Commissioner District 1.
Rafael Ortega, District 5.
My Chan, District 6.
Brady Frank, Deputy Director, St. Paul Ramsey County Public Health.
Melissa Finnegan, RNA Strategic Partnerships Manager.
Daniel Schmidt, Environmental Health Division Manager.
Matt Phillips, RNA Public Health Director.
Matt Phillips, RDA County Manager.
All right, so we are here today to continue our workshop from June 3rd, focusing on the joint activities budget of the Ramsey, Washington Recycling and Energy, or the RNE. The joint activities budget is used for Ramsey, Washington Recycling and Energy Board activities, including joint waste management activities as set forth in the Joint Powers Authority between Ramsey and Washington counties. The RNE joint activities complement county efforts and help the community move materials up the waste management hierarchy. As a quick reminder, the Ramsey, Washington Recycling and Energy Center located in Newport, Minnesota represents a notable advancement in waste management for the East Metro area. The R&E Center is important to our waste management efforts, processing all, how we say this word wrong, you guys, municipal,
Yes.
there we go, solid waste from both counties and converting it into refuse derived fuel or RDF for energy production. Noteworthy recent enhancements include advanced sorting technologies that help recover recyclables and organics, aligning with Minnesota's goal of achieving 75% recycling by 2030. Additionally, the facility supports various programs such as Biz Recycling and the Residential Food Scraps Pickup Initiative, all of which emphasize waste reduction and waste recovery. Today, we're pleased to continue this important conversation with the Executive Director, Trista Martinson. She's joined by her leadership team, and take it away.
Excellent. Thank you, Commissioners. Thanks for welcoming us back. I know we've had most of this discussion already, so we won't start over at the beginning. We'll just pick up on the joint activities budget. But just to set context, I'm going to turn it over to Sam Hall just to remind you of the connection between the facility budget that this board does not have to approve, but that there is a direct connection between the facility, which is an enterprise fund, and our programmatic budget. So with that, Sam.
Good afternoon, Chair, Commissioners and staff. And what I want to do is highlight the relationship between the facility budget and the joint activities budget or program budget. And for context, our budget or the facility budget is really revolving around managing the amount of trash within the two counties and produce less trash out of a smaller budget. And it's built kind of the drivers around it are the relationships with the XL Energy power plants, the capacity they have there, and the transportation of bringing waste in and sending waste down or RDF down to the plants and landfill. And really, where the two budgets are going to connect it is really, reduce, reuse, recycle, trying to divert the problematic materials from the facility. So for example, bulky waste. When we're forced to deal with more bulky waste, it's harder on the equipment and maintenance. And then also related to the facility, we have the food sorting equipment, but really for that food sorting equipment to work and for us to get the volume we need for our anaerobic digestion feedstock supply agreement, we need a healthy and robust food scrap pickup program. And so really those two budgets are tied or interconnected there. And for historical purposes, I have the 26 and 27 budgets up there. It's 65 million for 2026 and 2027. It is 73 million. Historically, the current year budget's 59 million at $130 per tipping fee or per ton for the tipping fee. Next slide, please. And just realize, what the impact is to the residents, for the people that, my customers are the waste haulers, but our customers' customers is the residents, and that's who we represent here, and that's who we're doing this service for. And really, a change in tipping fee for $1, we estimate that each household creates 1 ton of trash per year. And when I increase the tipping fee by $1 or proposed for next year by $12, it'll increase the tipping fee on the average household by $12 per year. And to highlight that the tipping fee, or sorry, the portion of the tipping fee is only about 1/3 of the hauler bill or the trash bill for the customer. And that there's other direct costs of, a hauler operating a company beyond what our tipping fee is. And really, the theory with the impact of tipping fee is customers or residents really have a choice on managing their trash bill. Let's produce less trash, have smaller trash collection. And then, there'd be less of an impact. And why we brought up this portion here is that the CEC is derived, next slide, please. I think I have a highlight. So the county environmental charge is the portion that's collected or service charge off the trash bill. And let's see here, 28% for residents and 53% for commercial customers in the county. And they're assessed that service charge on their trash bill. And then that service charge goes to the counties for solid waste management programs at the environmental centers, as well as the joint activities program. So really understanding that our tipping fee will increase, that will then impact the residential garbage bills most likely. And then we'll also, in theory, should be able to forecast an increase to the revenues or service charge collected by the county for solid waste management practices. And that kind of tees it up to go into the program conversation. I think next slide. Just to highlight, the Washington County CEC or county environmental charge is 35% flat on residential and commercial. And they have programs as well that they, yard waste sites, environmental centers that they manage as well.
I will say, we had our workshop last week at the Washington County Board, so the same workshop. It also went long, so you don't have to feel bad. But Commissioner Miron mentioned that their CEC fund or fee used to be 37%, and they reduced it a few years ago. And he said that he takes responsibility, that he regrets having ever reduced it because it's so important to generate these funds to do this work. And so he actually was suggesting that they raise it back up, just as a situational awareness. So we're going to go into the program budget now that Sam Hansen leads. And I just want to really highlight, the way we set up this budget again was really looking at how do we accomplish what the board has already committed us to do. And so that is around the organics collection and that 20-year supply agreement. I know we've talked about that a lot. Maintaining additional, all the contracts we currently have in place, and really with the focus of not going backwards. As we know, it takes a long time to change human behavior. And so we want to make sure that we maintain the momentum and move forward so that we're meeting that state's requirement of a 75% recycling goal by 2030. Not to mention, it's the right thing to do for our communities as we think about how we do this work, and that we're really making a difference in the environment and into our health and safety of our communities, that we're doing it with an equitable lens.
I have a question.
Yeah.
But I want to go back to the slide before this slide here about the county environmental charges. So for the basic 90-gallon trash service for 3 months, is all of those charges detailed?
Yeah.
Who's been charged that? Is it just all Washington and Ramsey County, or? Okay.
So yes, so each county does it a little bit different, and they set their own way that they fund these programs. In Washington and Ramsey County, we have the county environmental charge that goes on the trash bill. So this would be an example of what that looks like.
I think I saw that charge on my bill. But are you in Holland and St. Paul?
So the hauler so what happens is the hauler collects that county environmental charge fee, and then they pay it to the county.
How about the city? I'm talking about St. Paul.
Same. It's the same.
So St. Paul.
St. Paul is a hauler, right? So their FCC is their hauler contract. That hauler FCC, that operates in the city of St. Paul charges a bill. The CEC is on that bill and then they pay it to the county.
And they pay it to the county.
Yeah.
And so every city, Madam Chair, sorry.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I mean,
Yeah.
if you want to call on me, yeah, otherwise I can just ask. my
Go
question.
go
Yeah,
ahead,
that's
Mary.
okay. I'm okay to
Commissioner
go
Frank.
through. Okay, I'm okay with asking. So, okay. So just to, so we're all, I'm clear and everything, the county environmental charge, we decide that it's 28%, and then they put it on top, each hauler puts it on top of what they're already charging. So every city arguably has the same environmental has a different environmental charge because it's 25% of whatever that hauler says is their cost. Right?
So it's based on so it's not charged on like the whole amount. If you see, it's on the cost of the cart, right? And then the fuel surcharge.
Yeah.
And then that's where the percentage comes from. But every hauler, regardless of what their cost is at those two faces, is gonna put 28% additional on CC. So
It will look different.
it
in
will
each
look
city.
slightly different.
Slightly.
And no, so not all cities are organized like St. Paul, so that's why we talk about haulers, right? Cause there are multiple haulers across the county, but all the haulers that work in Ramsey County charge the same
The
CEC
same
percentage.
CEC, but then they can say their costs are different, so we don't have any control over
No.
what they say their costs are.
No,
And we just say that whatever your costs are, you have to put 28%, so we're sort of at their mercy, so sometimes when these costs go up, it's not because of necessarily, it's not our CEC charge, it's that they're raising their costs. And of
yes,
course, they're saying it's the county, but
Yes,
sometimes.
yes.
But I think that also goes into play with the tipping fees.
Yeah.
Correct? So when we
Yeah.
increase the tipping fees, it increases the hauler's fee that can reflect on residents' trash bills.
Right.
So that's what I'm
Yeah.
reference
Yeah, thank you.
residents,
Yeah,
Right.
because there's an additional fee on my
Yes.
bill,
yes.
right?
yes,
So it's the St. Paul's hauler who hauls,
yeah,
and then it's an additional fee
Yes.
that I get to see in St. Paul from this.
yeah.
Yeah.
Different than it's called the county environmental
It's
charge.
the county
It's the
environmental
county,
Yeah,
charge.
so I see it we all see this on our bill, they don't, St. Paul doesn't see an
No,
additional
we
one
see it.
besides these, right?
No, just this.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So we see
it,
that too.
I can either see it on my bill or I see it on my, when I pay my taxes. It shows the 28% increase and.
it should not show up on your tax
That's always
statement.
somewhere.
It's only on your trash bill.
So
It
it's on
is
the
not
trash
on your
bill?
tax.
Yeah, so I
It
was
is
saying
on
either or, I see
Yeah.
it in either one of
Yeah,
places,
Yeah.
which is an additional fee
right.
for residents.
And again, like in St. Paul, FCC has different cart sizes. So the way to reduce your bill is to reduce the amount of trash you produce and get a smaller cart. Right? That's the incentive behind this is people
And-
can save money by producing less trash, which is what we're trying to do is get them to recycle. Cause what goes in the recycling bin is already paid for. There's no additional fee there.
Mhm.
So I think most everyone in St. Paul have a trash bin and a recycling bin.
Yeah,
Right? You know, we have large families, you
Yeah.
know, it'd be nice to have everyone to recycle, but
Yes.
everyone do not.
right.
And I don't know what that education looks like because I
That's
never
what we're
been
about
for
to present.
educational training.
Well, that's what we're about to get into.
Great
In
Yeah,
fact,
that's
that's
Even
great.
if I
Great
get a
transition,
training, whether or
yes.
not I can do it.
Yeah.
Do
Yeah.
it as a whole.
So all of our work that we're here and the budget we're here to discuss is on the programmatic side. Because all the work that Sam Hansen and his programs team is to develop programs and interconnection with residents to teach them how to do the right thing, how to reduce their waste, how to recycle, how to reuse, and how this all works. So that's what, great.
Last
perfect segue.
question,
Yeah.
so for, so this is not a regional piece, it's just only Ramsey and Washington.
Correct.
Right? No one from out of the country is bringing their stuff.
Correct.
How you know?
Oh, well, because we have designation, we know where the trash is coming from. So we have what's called designation.
Mhm.
Which means that in Ramsey and Washington County, all trash from the two counties must come to our facility. So we're managing only our trash. Haulers that are hauling for Anoka, their trash goes to a different location.
Okay.
Good questions.
Yeah.
And kind of picking up from that, so the CEC the county environmental charge. It's collected as we just described, and then that is what funds the Army programs budget. So the counties, you have the charge, you collect the charge, and then you get to decide how it gets used. It has to be used on things related to waste reduction, recycling, programming, things like that. But the counties will spend it in a variety of ways, and one of the ways, especially when it comes to addressing municipal solid waste, MSW, is through this program's budget. And as a reminder, this year, well, 26-27 is the first year that the contributions to this program budget is changing. So previously, Ramsey County was contributing 73% of the total budget, and Washington was 27%, and those are going up and down by 4%. So Ramsey in 26 is going to be responsible for 69% as opposed to 73 in years past, and Washington goes up from 27 to 31%. So again, that's how the counties use that CEC, put it into this budget to then fund all of the programming that we're going to look at here in these next slides to try to do, you know, outreach, education, engagement, but also a lot of resources. There's like helping businesses and residents understand what's available and what they can do, and then also the resources to make it as easy as possible so that it isn't a struggle, that it's not a barrier from cost standpoints, a knowledge standpoint. So trying to do everything we can to meet people where they're at, to help them do the things that are in the best interest of public, community, and environmental health.
Can you talk a little bit about, as a St. Paul County Commissioner,
yeah.
you know how I feel about this?
Yeah.
And St. Paul is not benefiting from this? Right.
Yes. Oh, so, okay, you're solely talking about the food scrap program. And they're not benefiting, they're not participating yet in the same way that others, but it's all part of the roll-on plan and infrastructure building. So we have to build the infrastructure in order to participate, and you have to fund the infrastructure in order to have it so that people can participate. So that's every other part of this. St. Paul is absolutely, and every St. Paul resident is participating and benefiting from. I'll also just share that we know that the upstream work is working, because despite population increases that we've seen, I think the new Met Council prediction on population came out for 2024, and it's already a 6% growth that came out last week. And we're still managing the same amount of trash in our facility. So we've seen population growth over time between the two counties, but we're still managing only about 400,000 tons. That normally you would expect that number to also grow with population. So we know that the upstream education recycling is working, because we're keeping the amount of waste despite population growth flat.
So one last question. So based on population, is that the Ramsey County population is so much bigger than Washington
Yes.
County? Is that's why we got 69%?
And that's now tied. So last fall, after I started this job, we changed that percentage to make it fair. And it's based on population projections, which also coincides with the amount of waste produced. And then we set in the joint powers agreement that it'll readjust every 10 years when the census comes out, to make sure that we're on track with the proper, so it's fair on who's paying what.
Do that exclude St. Paul in the fairness?
St. Paul is absolutely, you know,
We're all the
Commissioner,
same.
and as you know, I live in
In the
St. Paul.
population growth, since
Right.
population is what
Yeah.
not.
Yep, so it is the same
All the
wide.
same.
So there are no there are no carve outs for any city. We're looking at this countywide, and countywide, and it is absolutely fair. As a St. Paul resident, I can tell you this is fair. All right.
Go to the next slide,
Yes.
and to kind of show what all is included there, because there's a food scrap pickup program that we're talking about, but there are a lot of other programs that are included as well.
Mhm.
So this is a list of the current R&E programs that would be funded by the budget that we're going to be looking at today. And these are kind of the overarching programs. There's a lot of kind of sub-programs and projects underneath these umbrella efforts, but all of these are available to all cities throughout both counties, with the food scrap pickup program being the one exception of, as Executive Director Martinson was just saying, once the infrastructure is ready in certain areas like St. Paul, then it'll be available. And until then, we've rolled out to everybody else who can physically participate currently in the program across the two counties. But the rest of these programs are all designed, again, with that upstream programming in mind, the waste hierarchy, to try to work with residents, with businesses, to reduce waste, recycle as much as possible, get materials to the right place at the right time, and ultimately to try to reduce the amount that ends up at the facility, and therefore that we have to process. Because as our mission and vision say, we don't want waste either, and the programs are the ways that we are proactively working to try to reduce waste in the communities. And it's the way when the two counties decided to purchase a facility and create what is now RNE, these programs are the primary way that both counties really address municipal solid waste throughout the two counties as far as waste reduction, recycling, that. And then here's just a quick snapshot of some of the impacts from 2024. This is not everything by any means, just a few highlights of what we were able to achieve through our programming last year, including working with over 300 businesses, nearly 200 multi-unit properties, 150 grants, and ultimately we were able to divert an estimated amount of about 5,500 tons of municipal solid waste diverted through these programs, which is again impacting the tip floor of the facility. And then also 4,300 tons of food that was recovered and redistributed. So together, getting close to 10,000 tons of waste diverted per year as of the 2024 impacts or what we saw from last year's programming. And all of this also means that nearly 5,000 metric tons of CO2 were avoided because of this programming. So there's the tonnage, there's the waste, and then there are all the other benefits of education, engaging residents, businesses, CO2 diversion. So there's a lot of value in these programs besides just what hits the tip floor or doesn't hit the tip floor.
I'll also just mention on the food recovery and redistribution, we're now the biggest player in the food recovery network across our counties and actually in the whole region. We have stepped up in a way to really think about how we recover and redistribute, working directly with food shelves and community groups throughout the counties. And in a way that it used to be Second Chance would do that. They're no longer doing food recovery in the way they used to. We are now the biggest player in food recovery and redistribution as the RNE. So something you all could be really proud of, that our community is getting the food they need.
Okay, so now we'll get into the actual budget. And I know I explained this before, but just to reiterate kind of what you're going to see. So we've worked on the 26-27 budget with Ramsey County and Washington County staff. We've presented 3 different drafts of this budget to the RNE board. And the RNE board had asked us to also present the same 3 drafts to both counties at these board workshops. So you'll see in the following slides, the 3 drafts that are listed, they're going to be labeled and color coded. So draft 1, which will be color coded in green, is the original budget that we proposed to the RNE Facility and Finance Committee in early April. Draft 2 is then of a reduced version of that original budget. It'll be in blue colors, color coding. And that is reduced by about $1 million compared to that original one, draft 1. And then draft 3 will be orangish yellow color. And that will be a reduction of about $2 million compared to their original draft 1 as well. And all 3 drafts fully fund the food scrap pickup program. So the food PAT program, it's the #1 priority for both counties for RNE. We're set to fully roll it out to all communities within this 2-year budget. So in all scenarios, we're fully funding everything that we know we need for that program to be successful and to get it available to every resident. And then because of that program, the costs for it are going up as expected, because as you roll it out and more people participate, then there's more expenses. To try to compensate for the growth of that program, we've had to adjust all of those other programs that you saw listed on the previous slide to make sure that the overall total budget is still palatable for both counties. So we've shrunk some of those programs, which you'll see in the following slides. And then in all 3 versions, there are some additional staff that we're requesting to fully implement this full budget. And I'll get to the different staff and what they are as we go through each area of budget. And so here, we'll look at this a few times, so don't worry, we can come back to it. But here's all the numbers. So I'll explain kind of what we have here. So on the far left, those are the areas of the R&E programs budget or the joint activities budget. You can call it either one, same thing. And I'm gonna, in the following slides, gonna walk through each of those budget areas so you know what's in those areas and then what's changing compared to 2025. One column over to the right, 2024 actuals, those are the numbers, that's what we actually spent in those different budget areas last year. And I'll again go through those in the following slides. And then 2025 budget, that's what we currently have in each of those budget areas budgeted this year. And then comes the three versions of the proposed 26-27 budget. So the green, which was the original one that we proposed, and it's the largest of the three. The blue is in the middle, that was the reduction of about $1 million, and the orange on the far right, that's a reduction from the green of about 2 million. So it kind of moves green to orange, the largest budget to the smallest budget that has been proposed so far.
That's quite an increase, and that's based on.
Yeah, we'll get into it. Most of that is as we roll out food scraps, the cost goes up. So it goes back to your St. Paul residents are paying for something they don't get. The truth is they're not, because we're not spending it until they get it. So that's the increase.
So is St. Paul ready to receive the food scrapping? Because do you have to get permission from the cities to do this? You just do it?
You're right. The city, the haulers are our partners. It has nothing to do with the city. The haulers are our partner. Now, yes, St. Paul is organized with FCC. FCC then is our partner, and they will be ready as soon as we build the transfer station in St. Paul.
As I understand it, St. Paul, because we've asked them, and they've been waiting on their organics recycling, because other cities are already doing it. They've been waiting for us to do ours. Like, as far as I understand, like Minneapolis is doing curbside organic.
No. St.
Oh.
Paul asked to go last.
Yeah, I was
partly
gonna
because
say.
they were organizing.
Oh, okay.
Right, and they were changing their hauler situation, and at the same time, we were working on where would we get transfer stations, so we have to
Yeah.
build those transfer stations and
So
infrastructure.
they haven't done their own organics recycling like Minneapolis has, right? As it,
Oh, because again,
they're-
it's not their
Right.
own, it's the hauler,
Right,
right?
yeah.
And yes, yeah.
I mean, people said, why doesn't St. Paul have this? And they said, because it's Ramsey County's gonna do it.
Correct.
Right.
Yeah.
So then these are the same numbers you saw on the last slide, but just shows what the county contributions are, again, with that new split of 69% for Ramsey County, down from 73. And again, we'll come back to this, but this shows you just if we went with one of these budgets, what the Ramsey County and then Washington County contribution would be.
I want to be really direct too, is that the original draft, the green is the preferred budget. There's no dream budget here listed. We actually have a dream budget, which is significantly higher. I'd be happy to share, but we went with understanding the current economic situation. The green budget is what we feel we need to be successful without going backwards in our progress and work. So, and then we were asked, what would it look like if we cut more? And the more we cut, the more concern I have for both the expense at the facility, and whether or not we move backwards in where we've made progress over the last 10 years, that it would go back especially in those areas of working with businesses and multi-units. And Sam will explain that, but I just want to be honest that the green budget is the preferred budget. Again, not a dream budget,
I
but
know you is.
preferred.
So, but I'm just thinking, since the partnership that was created between Ramsey and Washington County, it seems, and I don't know how much Washington County has grown since that beginning, and maybe Ramsey County, I hear our population is going down in the city, it seems like it's a little bit more inequity there.
Yeah.
And it just seems like at this point, as Washington County is growing and whatnot, that they would pay more into it.
Right, that's why we changed the percentage. So it is that percentage.
I know, but we
change.
started at a real disadvantage here, paying a whole lot, and then a little bit.
Well, our CEC pool is also larger than Washington County's because of the population and the number of people paying. So,
They don't think they should pay more? You don't think they should pay more?
Washington County,
Yeah.
I mean, that.
I mean,
that-
I hear there was
Yeah.
a little increase from 69, from whatever it was back there. 4%.
Yeah, they had a 4% increase because they had a 4% population growth. So they're now paying, which I think is appropriate in the percentages. Yeah.
Go ahead.
Did Washington County indicate any interest in potentially changing their
Yes.
share?
It's
I mean, changing their percentage, like, ever?
Oh,
Like, do they feel like they would like to pay more into their like,
so when we.
charge more for their CAC?
Oh, okay, so there are
Two different
couple
questions, yeah.
questions.
Yeah.
So that percentage change, the going up to 31%.
Yeah.
That was Washington County coming to the table saying, we recognize we're not paying our fair share. And that's why we changed the joint powers agreement last fall. Washington County came to
Right.
Ramsey and said, we want to pay more, we're not
Okay.
paying our share. So they've already
Based
stepped
population.
there based on population and agreed in the joint powers agreement to adjust according to census data. So that's already built in for an increase, and if Ramsey County goes down, that would be adjusted as well. So there it is fair. As far as increasing how much they're charging for this CEC, again, we don't get the whole amount of CEC, we're just asking for a portion of the CEC. So just like in Ramsey County, where you use your CEC funds to build your environmental center, to do other kinds of waste disposal and hazardous waste. Right, we had that earlier in the presentation. Washington County does the same thing. Roughly, the R&E budget is about a third of each county's CEC pool. So does that answer your question?
Yeah, I guess I was just curious, like, it seems like I don't know how long they've had that flat 35%.
Yeah,
But it's kind of interesting to think charging your businesses and residents exactly the same
Mhm.
versus
It's
sort of.
just truly unfair.
Kind
Yeah,
of looking at
and
that a
then,
little
I mean,
different.
that's a decision each.
Of course, and they're
county makes on
prioritizing their
own, and
businesses.
They prioritize, right, growth, that's their county decision. But as far as what comes out of that pool, about a third of the CEC budget comes to ours.
Okay, so now I'm gonna walk through those budget areas that I showed on a couple slides ago, just to again show what is housed in those areas of the budget, what programs live there, are funded in each of those areas, and then what is changing in the proposed budgets compared to what we have currently in 2025. So the first, and I'm gonna start with the areas of the budget that are directly funding programs, and then there's a couple at the end that aren't directly funding programs that I'll explain. But the first one would be commercial and residential recycling. So this is where all of our programs that kind of directly work with residents and or businesses to reduce waste, recycle more. So biz recycling is the biggest and most well-known, along with business pollution prevention, our multi-unit recycling. And then this is also where all of our food recovery, food waste prevention efforts fit into the budget. And then there's at the bottom, compost biochar product promotion. We're moving that to a different section, so I'll talk about that when we get there. But this slide just shows you these are the programs that get funded in this area and some of the 2024 results, just of kind of, this is what you get for the funding for these programs. As far as working with businesses, waste diverted, CO2 avoided, all of that.
And then while we're on this slide, just to help us out, so, you know, we all, so this is the R&E budget, which is our joint budget. We each have our own, CEC, we each have our own, environmental, services, department.
Yeah.
Are they doing some of this work, or are you are they doing
This
any
is
this
solely
recycling?
R&E work.
Yeah,
This
Right.
is solely
so
R&E.
our people aren't doing multi-unit residential recycling, they're not going out there and doing any of that.
There
I know
are-
It's not part of this.
It's
This
fully
pay-
funded through the R&E budget, and we operate these programs. There are county staff that do participate in some of the programs,
Oh, okay.
helping. But there aren't county resources being provided that would,
There's
To
no
do these
duplication.
programs. I just want to make sure we understand there's no duplication. So if we want to increase our biz recycling, which my businesses want,
Yeah,
and if we want to increase multi-unit residential, which we absolutely need, we have to do it this way, right? We don't do it
currently.
through our own people. We do it through our current program.
Yeah.
Okay.
There is no business assistance program.
Yeah, that's duplicating that. Okay.
So with those programs in mind, here are the numbers for the draft budgets. So again, those programs listed on the left. The 24 actuals, this is what we spent last year on these programs. and then what is budgeted for this year, 25, and then those three drafts. And then the lines where you see the red numbers in each of those columns, those are just reflecting the changes for that draft compared to 2025. So for example, biz recycling, the 26 and 27 draft one budget is about $150,000 less compared to what we have budgeted this year in 25. But if you go to draft two, it's a reduction of 250,000. If you go to draft three, it's a reduction of 355,000 from biz recycling compared to what we have this year. So these numbers kind of reflect what will change in our programming that we currently offer compared to what we're offering today to businesses, to residents. And so you see, this is the area where the adjustments have the largest impact. So again, knowing food scrap pickup program, the costs are going up. This is where the majority of our other programs are budgeted, and this is where the majority of the reductions are coming. And I won't go through all of these. You can see the numbers overall, but yes, the overall budget, the program's budget is an increase. And again, we'll get to why. It's mainly the food scrap pickup program, but you'll see here, just for these programs, all of these different drafts reduced our programming by anywhere from 11% to all the way to 24% compared to what we have currently offered today.
Wow. How you doing that? Why? Did I hear you say you're reducing the programming?
Correct.
When also you talk, when you share more
Yeah.
programming and the cost and all.
Yeah, it's the reason because we were, as we're doing budgets, we have to recognize the financial situation of our time, right? And where the community is, we recognize the challenges the county has in other areas and what that messaging looks like. And we were trying to control the rate of increase, knowing that the food scraps is gonna pick up so much of that increase that we recognize we couldn't come. Again, I have the budget that's an ideal budget, which is much higher overall, but we knew we couldn't come to the board and say, here, we need all this money. Here's what we believe, doing due diligence, that if we tighten our belt really tight, we can still maintain the momentum we've had without losing speed. And so this is our way of doing that.
So I heard you say you're reducing the program, but I also said you are increasing the program.
Different programs,
Different
We'll get
different
Different
programs.
programs.
There's
All of
not,
these
we
are
have
being-
many programs.
All of these are being reduced.
So if we go back to the list of, these are all the programs that we do at.
In this
the-
budget area.
I think you might have stepped out just when we covered this slide. So we do biz recycling, business pollution prevention, multi-unit residential recycling, food recovery, and then moving into compost and biochar promotion in this area.
These will be less.
And so we'll show where the increases come into play and how they bounce, but this area of the budget, these programs are where the largest reductions are being made, again, just to compensate for the overall growth, because we know, as Tris was saying, we know we have to control the overall size, that it's a tough economic climate. Ideally, we'd love to have all of these programs continue.
Yeah.
Conversations now
Yeah.
too.
Yeah.
Yeah. I get it, yeah.
And so I think these adjustments too are our effort to recognize the situation that we can't have more of everything. So these reductions are the ones that will allow us to continue the work without having too much of a negative impact on the progress we've made. Especially in the green column, that's essentially right sizing to the closer to the level of what we've seen the last few years as far as demand for some of these grants and resources. And then the blue and the orange are reducing from there even more, without eliminating programming, but certainly reducing them. Second area that directly funds programs is called Community Waste Solutions. These are programs that they could be residentially focused, they could be commercially focused, but there's also kind of a community element. So this is where our bulky waste work comes in. So mattress recycling, we collect it from multi-unit properties, but we also do city-wide cleanup events. This is where we'll hopefully be collecting from environmental centers from both counties as well. Deconstruction, so offering grants to deconstruct residential and commercial properties and reuse those materials. The compost and biochar, this is moving from that last budget area. So this is a very small line item. In 2025, it's only $50,000, but it's essentially as the two counties are collecting more and more food scraps from residents, and we're sending that currently to compost facilities and then in the future anaerobic digestion. We're also trying to do some promotion of those end products so that the system is a bit more circular.
Mhm.
We want to increase demand for the finished compost, for the biochar later on. So doing some education, some awareness building, and then distributing some materials too to grow that demand. And then two things that are being removed from this 26-27 budget that are in current budget are community resource hubs and reuse and repair. Both of those we had in the current budget 24-25, but we haven't had staff capacity to do either. So recognizing again that we have to tighten the belt a little bit, we're just eliminating them from the budget for 26-27.
Can I ask a question on that? So if that was approved in the previous budget, are those funds just reallocated or are those funds going to go to the reserves for policy?
They already.
They already went, okay,
Yeah.
they already.
24.
From 24.
From 24, but 25, they'll go,
Will get
will get reallocated
Yes.
somewhere else. Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
And just to note that the County Environmental Center, so your staff is
Is
Daniel
doing that.
presented are picking up that
Yeah.
gap.
That was just, actually,
Yeah.
that was the question, is there, some of that seems to be.
It's still
being-
happening, it's just
in a
happening
different
in a
way.
different way and not with R&E.
Okay.
The other thing I'll just mention too, because you're focused on St. Paul and your colleagues have heard this, Commissioner Moran, mattress recycling has been a huge success. We partner with Second Chance Coalition to do that mattress recycling. And St. Paul has expanded that partnership as well. So not only to do mattress recycling, but their goal was to pilot the bulky, so other furniture like couches and chairs in that recycling. They're co-located with the new St. Paul's Public Works Center to do that work. So this is a program that we fund and partner that is really benefiting the community. They've moved from Minneapolis to added a St. Paul location. The other thing, unlike we actually have, because it's a jobs program for people coming out of incarceration, second chances. They spend their time about 9 months getting trained, but then they have to go find permanent employment. And we have opened our doors and have hired a few of those gentlemen who now have great union paying jobs and benefits. And so it's a full circle that started with us investing in mattress recycling.
So in regards to mattress recycling, do you haul and pick up mattresses? Do people have to bring it to you? or
Second
that-
Chance Coalition picks them up, so people can call
Oh,
and get a
yeah,
free
number?
pickup.
Mhm.
And that's through our funding and partnership.
You got a phone number?
Yeah, yes, I'll get you.
I'm serious, yeah.
Yes, I'll get your phone number, absolutely.
So similar to the last one, here is kind of the adjustments for 26-27 in the different drafts. And so what you'll see here is primarily the amounts for community resource hubs for use and repair. Again, we're removing them from the budget. So we're kind of reinvesting those funds into the bulky waste solutions in particular, because that's where, again, the mattress recycling and deconstruction, where we've seen a high demand. So overall, this area of the budget doesn't shrink nearly as much as the previous one that we just looked at, because we're kind of reinvesting into what's working and what is bringing the most value to the communities and to the R&E facility. So then the one thing to note on the compost and biochar section there, this is the one section where there's a big difference between the three drafts. In the green draft, in that compost biochar, we'd still be doing what I explained before, kind of promoting these end products, trying to grow demand for them, but that's a small amount, $50,000. But then we have another $450,000 approximately set aside for trying to get more food scrap waste from business entities, from large generators outside of the food scrap pickup program that we'll be able to send to the AD facility once it is built and operating per the contract that we have with that facility. So we have a contract with the AD facility. We are expecting to get 30,000 tons of food scrap waste from the food scrap pickup program. And then we're expecting 20,000 tons to come from our processing line. And then there's an additional 15,000 tons that we are contractually obligated to provide to the facility that we know we can get from businesses, large generators, institutions. And so in the green version only, there's $450,000 for incentives, contracts, grants, kind of the carrot to be able to get that tonnage to where we need it to be. And then it would also include 2 FTEs here. really solely focused on that work, trying to get that tonnage to meet the contractual obligations. But then in the draft 2, draft 3, both that $450,000 and the 2 FTEs would be eliminated. So we wouldn't have any kind of set aside money for that effort. And therefore, if we need to develop grants, incentives, any sort of financial incentive for businesses to contribute that food waste to our system, we'd have to pull that from other programs or kind of redirect all of our existing programs to be focused on that, and therefore put aside all of the traditional waste reduction and recycling.
Just in a general conversation, I will say when it comes to advocates for keeping our tax base low, a large part of that comes from our business community. What can we be doing to help communicate that, that one way that they can partner with us to help us hold that line is to, perhaps be able to encourage them to adopt these without the financial incentive, meaning
Yeah.
it's a both and, right?
Yeah.
You know, the idea that it would be wonderful for folks to adopt appropriate behaviors without having to be paid to do so.
Yes, it would be,
And that would definitely help us keep some of our programs
Yes.
down.
yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. I mean, it's gonna have to be in conversations and relationships, but as you know, in the business community, it often comes down to the bottom line. Even businesses that want to do the right thing, it still comes down to dollars and cents. So, again, as we build out the markets for biochar, for instance, that will help us be able to do this in the long run, but this stuff takes time. That, whether it's an incentive or a pickup, there's a delta between the cost of even just collecting organics. The tip fee is about $88 to go to a compost facility. And we know best case scenario, to get to the biochar that we're projecting with the digester, it's gonna be $125 tip fee. So there's a delta there that businesses would either have to absorb on their own, or that we could work to say, how do we eliminate some of that work as we go, and that until it's phased out and the biochar becomes more valuable, that we wouldn't need that.
And my comments are the same comments we're having with all of our providers who
Yes.
provide care, with
Yeah.
our families, with our individuals, with all of our partners. It's to say, we trust you to be partners with us in
Yeah.
trying to take care of this community. This is one way to help us meet that gap or that delta.
Yeah,
So I'm just trying to find ways so that as you're educating us, we can educate
Yeah.
our responsible partners who we rely on to help us
yeah,
all in all sorts of ways. And I'm sure that some it will come down to the bottom line, and some it may be show us how to come to meet you
Yeah.
where you need us to be. and
so
some combination.
a lot of that works, so just going back to biz recycling, which will also be prioritizing businesses that produce organic. Is we provide technical assistance, so it's not always just a grant, but we actually go in and do assessments of what their processes are and how they can reduce waste, so they can be good partners. And we provide that technical assistance to them as well, and so that's another way that we can do exactly what you're suggesting.
And that was part of what I
Yeah.
was thinking too, as we were looking at these programming, is that adding in that education with the
Yeah.
biz recycling, because I know
It is.
some of that is targeted. And some of it is generally talking to our business
Yeah.
communities, and to have that be an extra 2 or 3 slides or
Yes.
handouts or
Yes.
emphasis. Shouldn't be triplet, it shouldn't be, you don't have to have a whole new program to add that
Right,
in.
no, it's already added in. We've been providing technical assistance, and we serve far more businesses in technical assistance than we do give grants to.
Okay.
Yeah,
That's reassuring,
Yeah.
thank you.
And Madam Chair, as long as we're talking biz recycling, it's such a great example of how, early education, or, we're all about early intervention and prevention, but calling our businesses, sometimes it's just helping with that technical and giving them a $30 bin that will help them, be aware. I mean, it's not that much. And it shows up so much more later on. Like, I just want to have more biz recycling, because I'm talking to businesses and they're like, yeah, we want to, but, one person maybe wants to, they have to, educate their leadership to make sure that it can happen. We just have to make it so easy for them.
exactly.
And they should do it on their own, believe me. I think they should, but they're not. And just some of the help that we can give them, and don't even get me started on multi-unit, just, all the apartments and condos that need to do this work. And I think that people want to do it, but they need help. They're not gonna do it on their own, and I wish they would, but anyway. Don't get me started on all these things that need more money, but anyway, okay, go.
Commissioner Moran.
Sorry. I'm
Some
on
of
the
all
phone
the
now.
questions,
Oh,
I think everyone's probably been on this committee
yeah.
but me.
Yes,
But to go back to the mattress, so it says R&E spends $20 per, it was on the other, per mattress recycle. Is it a charge for pickup or do you take care of that?
Commissioner, that's a great question. So it's changed a little bit over the years. Currently, so the $20 per mattress is our rough average of what we spend. But we collect mattresses through a lot of different ways to try to meet community where they're at and make it as easy as possible. So we do like on-site collections at multi-unit properties. We do curbside collection for any resident in limited capacities. It's not yet been year round, but like your city gets it for this month, so call this number, we'll do it for free. City collections, so the cleanup events. And over the last 3 years, we've kind of tried these different efforts, pilot tested them, and then charged different amounts. In some cases, it's free of charge for the resident entirely. In some cases, we've done like a cost share with the, say, the city for city cleanups, so it makes it a very reduced cost. And trying to kind of figure out what is the right level of incentive to get mattresses to the place that we want them to be without it being a barrier to residents. So, well, I'd have to look at kind of what the cost structure is currently for like St. Paul for 2025.
answer that.
Oh, do you have it up?
So we have it up, and mattresses, a resident can call and unlimited number for free of charge. And that's because between us and St. Paul, we're picking up the cost together. And they'll come out no cost to the resident and an unlimited amount. And we just sent you the link in your email.
Okay, beautiful.
Oh, and the rest of us,
Yes,
we have to wait for a city cleanup or whatever.
it depends. if-
Yeah, what
it-
city? We'll find out what the rest of
Bring it
it.
to Rena's house. You can call.
Yeah, I know. Just Serena and she can have it picked up, okay.
That just vanishes in my garage.
Or soon, one day you'll be able to bring to the environmental center.
Great questions.
Madam Chair, I have a question, in terms of the mattress recycling, and I may have asked this, doesn't the state have its own recycling, like fee that's attached to mattresses when it's purchased?
I don't know that.
No.
We wish, I mean, I think it's a proposal that we're hoping to get, I mean, it's one of those products,
In the
that
EPR
Victoria
thing?
kept doing, it's all this product,
Stewardship.
stewardship. Where if you produce mattresses, you have to take them back, like mattress, and sometimes they do, and then we work with them hopefully. But it's when people produce items like mattresses, like carpeting, like all these things. We want them to be responsible for them, meaning take them back and then work with us to recycle them. But they don't all do that, and they should on mattresses. I mean, there should be a fee attached to it whenever you buy a mattress for the product stewardship. But I don't know that it's there, and it's what
I
we're,
don't think.
every year, I think we're picking one item to kind of work on, but we should do it for so many more items.
Okay.
It's always, it's on our legislative agenda, to sort of keep working on that.
And then, one more question for the multi-unit residential recycling. For the trash that's generated at, apartments.
Yeah.
Does that get counted as residential trash or commercial?
Right? Multi-unit is residential.
It's no,
Commercial technically,
yeah, so multi-unit buildings that have more than 4 units are considered commercial properties. So if they have 4 or more than 4 units, then it would be commercial. If it's 4 or less, then it's residential.
Okay,
Which is why we also have that kind of fit into the biz recycling programs, because we're addressing the ones that are considered commercial properties.
right. Okay, yeah, I just want to add some thoughts about, how some of this is, we're obviously trying to address an issue that's like, at the very back end, right? Because I know for some apartments, they don't even offer recycling, so I think it's just really challenging when, that they're choosing not to offer that, service to its residents. Yeah.
And that's why we've worked so hard to, one, get access to multi-units, because as you all know, even just door knocking access, right, into a multi-unit is tricky and difficult. So getting to the management company to educate them, to provide, to have their tenants asking and demanding for it as well. In addition to our food scraps. So that's why we work so hard to get in there.
And I know that we've discussed the option about, like by ordinance or
Yes.
like organics.
Yes.
Is that a consideration for recycling? Or would each city have to pursue their own ordinance?
We will look into it. I'm sure there's legalities
It's a
around
great
it, but we
question.
can
Yeah.
look into it.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Commissioner Ortega?
repeat what you said about commercial and residential.
Yeah, so if it's more than 4 units, it's considered commercial.
And commercial costs more than residential.
Yes.
So in a sense, I hear Mary Jo talking about she wants more of these multi-units. That's a barrier, isn't it?
Might be for those units, do they,
Well,
I don't know. if cost doesn't
Recycling
much-
would be not a
Right,
barrier and
right.
organics wouldn't be a barrier if they're willing to do it. I
Yeah,
think
this is
a lot of it
garbage.
has to do is when they
Yeah, this
even
is
just think
garbage.
about placement, where do they put it, where do they store it, those kinds of
Yeah,
things. There's
but-
some of that technical assistance that we provide. And education.
Cause our fee's only on garbage. That's
That's
really
right.
about, and they all have garbage.
And it could depend on how the building is charged, so, because the building, whoever's owning or managing the building is gonna pay that fee for the garbage, and then.
Right,
Okay,
They
and
will decide
then
how to
there's the
charge.
difference between, I'm trying to process this, rental and condo.
Right,
Mhm.
yeah, right.
So. So if it's a condo and there's private ownership. Help me out here, wouldn't it
It's
still be more
residential?
incentivized by having it residential versus commercial?
Yeah, but we don't decide what it constitutes. It has to do with the statute, right? Helps
City tax.
the city. The
They're
city,
the county, the company.
yeah.
It has to do with what?
City
So
The-
who determines when, no, not that. Who determines whether something is residential or commercial?
would that be zoning?
But that will go from
Yeah.
city to city, wouldn't it, then?
Yeah,
That
so we'll have
wouldn't
to
be
look into that.
Yes.
I kind of wanna add, I get where you're going with it,
Yeah.
because it would be cheaper for a business
To pay less.
to pay less, because they're paying more of the CEC funds, that 50-some%. And they're not participating in recycling, and just kind of thinking it from their point, they're like, well, we could just charge more rent because we gotta pay more trash, so we're just gonna increase your rent 20 more bucks a month or 50 more bucks, right? Like, that's probably, oh yeah,
Do you look into that?
Yes,
Yeah,
it's a good point, it's very good point.
I'm trying to figure out who.
who decided via you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Madam Chair, I have a question on the community waste
Mhm.
piece. Madam
Yep.
Chair.
Yes, sorry.
Okay.
I was
I'm
like,
trying to,
what are you
I gotta get better, I gotta get better.
based on what Raphael, hold your, can I,
Okay.
and then,
Mhm.
so recycling is, different than that then, right?
Yes.
Recycling is, whether they have recycling or not, is, up to the city or the place. Like, who makes sure that these places have recycling? Cause I know our city just got a new recycling contract.
Yeah, there are ordinances placed that every resident should have access to recycling in the metro area. So in case of like St. Paul, where they have a contract with Eureka or they could have another provider. Some cases, it's the city that's actually providing that service. In some cases, like a multi-unit property, they may have a commercial vendor that then brings in the carts to do it, but all residential units are supposed to have access to recycling.
By city ordinance or by county ordinance, by who?
I think it's.
By state? I'm
You
curious.
can get back to.
Yeah, well,
Yeah, I
States
just
that-
think, just so we know where to, the
Yeah.
pressure, cause I'm I'm on the.
The
same
state
line
sets
as
it
you
for
are.
businesses, so all businesses must have access to
Yeah.
recycling for at least up to at least three items. And you have to meet certain qualifications of size of business, amount of trash produced. So my
Yeah.
assumption is it's the same, the state sets it for multi-units, but
And then I think it's an enforcement issue. I mean, I'm sure it is. I mean, I think there's state,
Yeah.
there's state law, and then who's enforcing it.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So I'm looking at like the community resource hubs, I'm
Yeah.
looking at, moving from commercial and residential recycling. I'm looking at, eliminating the reuse and repair. And in my mind, that's all community focused, but
Yes.
our tax, but we're gonna be charged more, but the benefits.
so the community.
I don't see the
resource
benefits.
Reuse, repair, those two in particular, the
Mhm.
county staff are picking up those programs. It's
At the
just
new
coming out of the
environmental
R&E budget.
At the new environmental center. So you might, yeah, so those, I mean, I was gonna mention
All
that too,
three.
that they could almost be a little misleading when you have the negative number in there.
Mhm.
Because it looks like then that you're cutting them because of budget reasons, not because of essentially what you said a few slides ago, that like you didn't have the staffing or the capacity, because those items were in the approved budget that's this year, or this year's budget. So those are what we do as a county. The environmental center has a reuse and repair room, and they're taking care of more of that.
So we're removing, we're moving 150,000 from our budget and you all are keeping it.
Yeah, so it's,
Right.
because it would have been a duplicate of services
Yes,
then,
yeah.
would have been a duplication.
It's still happening, it's just not happening with us.
Well,
Okay.
Okay, so next is the food scrap pickup program. So it's called the food scrap recycling area of the budget. And this is where those increases were, when you look at the overall budget size and how it's going up, it's almost entirely right here.
Mhm.
So again, as the program rolls out and more people participate, the costs go up. And that's not a bad thing. We've anticipated that. And on the next slide, we'll show you how we anticipate that continuing. But just to kind of show why these costs increase, the bags themselves, as we roll out and more people sign up, we anticipate needing to spend about $1.3 million more on just the bags in 26 compared to 2025. And with more bags, there's more warehousing, fulfillment, distribution, customer service, all of that. So that increases by about 900,000 compared to 25. Promotional activities, I'm showing it here and you can see what we have budgeted on the bottom, but that is actually moving to the next section of the budget that will show all of our programs. We have kind of communications, outreach, education, community engagement activities that go along with those programs. They're all budgeted in the education, communications, outreach budget, except for food scraps for 24 and 25, we had it in the food scrap budget. So we're just moving that to the other section. So I'll show that in a future slide, just so that it's the same way that we budget for all of our programming. But I want to highlight it here because that also is increasing quite a bit. We have 625,000 currently budgeted, and we'll show you what we have budgeted on one of the next slides. And then this is where one of those FTEs that we're requesting would come into play, of really a program assistant, kind of an entry level position to provide across the board support for the food scrap pickup program as we roll out to all residents in the 2 counties.
Can I just ask a question? Because as a new commissioner, I just want to make sure that I fully.
Yeah.
Because this is a big jump,
Yes.
right? And especially coming in as a new commissioner, so, but these were expected
Yes.
jumps. So
Yeah.
previous budget seasons, so previous years, this has
Yes.
been a topic of discussion to note that, hey, in a couple of budgets,
Yes.
we are gonna see a large increase.
Yes.
Okay, I just wanted to make
Yeah.
sure that,
As we roll this up.
And
Yeah.
when we decided to move ahead with the contract,
Yeah.
it was,
It
it was already projected.
Okay.
This is gonna cost.
Show the next slide, we can show that too, because this is the first big jump. And as you
Yeah.
can see, it's the biggest jump that we anticipate.
Right.
So from 25 to 26, it's about 186% increase. And again, that we've known that that's coming. And now it's here.
Yeah,
Yeah.
now it's the
that's,
realization.
So you can see kind of, and I should say, these are rough projections based on current costs, current contracts. If timelines, if everything goes perfectly as planned and no costs change, which they probably will. These are our rough estimates of what just the food scrap pickup program will cost over the next 5 years. So 26 is the biggest jump, but then that jump continues 27, and then our next 2-year budget that we'll be working on in about a year for 28, there's another 31% increase on that one. So this is a program that, again, we've known that it's going to go up. We have goals set for participation, and until we meet those goals, the increase will continue quite a bit.
Mhm.
And again, if we hit all of our goals and we hit that within about a 5-year window, then probably that 2030 total cost for the program is more of what we might call like a maintenance budget. So
Mhm.
it'll probably still increase because it's still behavior change. We still have to do
Mhm.
outreach, communication,
Mhm.
people move. So there's a lot of work to be done, but we wouldn't, hopefully after 2030, wouldn't see as steep of an increase. It'd be more of that kind of year over year cost of living type of increase.
County Manager. Becker?
Yeah, I think this is a
Okay.
great slide. I love the out years and
Mhm.
thinking kind of, the
Ahead.
projection. I think, I would just ask you to mark the slide as one you bring back the next year
Yeah.
and actually add the actuals.
Sure.
Yeah.
So let's see how you
Yeah.
did
In
for your
prediction.
projections so
Right.
that you can recalibrate a lot, like
Yes.
kind of keep the moving needle along and keep the actuals there, because again, so much is in flux.
Yeah.
So this is a really great slide and we should just keep building off of it,
Yeah.
in my opinion.
Commissioner Moran and then Commissioner Jevons.
You know, I was kind of like thinking the same thing, you know, make some assumptions of what that may look like. But it's also a time where our economy and people's paychecks and all of this is in a flux. And, you know, I think we might, we're being very ambitious, you know, with the work that you think needs to be done at a time where many are in crisis.
Unfortunately, we can't change these numbers because we have a 20-year contract obligation that we agreed to go into a 20-year contract that we have to fulfill. And if we don't fulfill it, we're paying for it anyway.
Yeah, okay, anyway.
We should also say the program is free to all residents, so
Yeah.
these are the costs that it takes to run the program. But any resident can sign up when it's, they're in
They're
their
not-
eligible area, and
Yeah.
if they're not
And
paying.
hopefully reduce their costs
That's
in
right.
waste.
Yes,
So this is
Right.
mostly for what
this is the food scrap.
programs, is for like resources, the bags.
This is
But the professional
specifically for the,
service.
this is specifically for the food scrap.
Food
I will also say,
scraps.
so the MPCA is requiring all communities over 5,000 must collect organics by 2030. So it's a requirement that we have to do, and we chose to go with this bag program because it's about the third of a cost of if we went with a cart program. So if we had a cart program and projections, you would see about 3 times this cost.
Commissioner Jevonson?
So I have two questions. One of them is if all the municipalities have to meet this budget and we're the ones who have put in kind of this, proactive, like well thought out
Yes.
way of getting there.
Yes.
Is part of our marketing, if we have a certain organics tonnage that we have to fulfill, how much are we shopping around to say, we're way ahead of y'all, bring your stuff to us, help us meet our tonnage?
It's literally what I do every single day.
Thank you.
That is my
Glad to hear it.
full-time job.
But here, and then the other piece that I have is that as we are looking at a 5-year projection, I mean, while we have had, now this is our second workshop getting through this very complicated information. To explain to somebody why we're spending $400 million, or no, sorry, $4 million on garbage bags, because that's what people will say, instead of people that help people.
Right.
Or other kind of very essential services. I guess I would just challenge us to think of, while I understand why we want to make this as barrier free, especially in the beginning,
Yes.
for our folks to be able to engage in this process that will
Yeah.
help us get to that tonnage.
Yeah.
I guess there's a part of me that thinks like somehow between now and a forever $4 million on organic bag purchases every year that's built into our budget. I'm just wondering if there's other ways that we can be thinking about, you know, how we get there. I mean, whether it's like we don't pay, we also don't want people to throw their garbage in the street. So
Yeah.
we don't buy their garbage bags, right? So at some point we
Yeah.
decided that
Yes.
collectively we all buy into that
Yeah.
not having garbage in the street benefits us all. And we even like our nice
Yeah.
smelling bags, should somebody be like proofread
Yeah,
like
yeah.
that, and they buy whatever bags fit there,
Right.
you know, so I mean, people are trainable in some of the areas.
Yeah, so we did put in some safeguards in that we will provide 2 rolls of the bags per resident per year, or per household per year. And if they order a 3rd bag, they have to pick up the cost. So we put some safeguards in so that this number doesn't get out of control and they start using bags for other reasons or storing them. So we did put safeguards in as a policy from R&E. Again, the R&E board said equity was their #1 priority and access. And the only way to be equitable and accessible was to use the bags and not carts. Because imagine in a multi-unit over 4, you can't have carts, right? And so like in Hennepin County, if it's multi-unit, they have no organics collection.
Yeah.
And now they're thinking about, oh, maybe we should have done what Ramsey County's doing, right? Because now it's about access and if we're providing. So we did build in safeguards. If at some point in the future county board or R&E board says we're not paying for bags anymore and we're passing those to customers, I would say we'll have a lot less participation and people will be going back to throwing it away.
And I'm just, and my thought is, you know, we're gonna push back on, and every person who's presenting a budget to
Yeah,
us, I
of
think
course.
creatively, so
Yep.
it's just, that's all I'm saying is let's keep our minds open to creative solutions
Totally.
as we're pushing these forward.
Yeah. trust
I
me.
just want to note, and I'm going to be cautious of time
Oh,
so we
yeah,
can get
here we
through
are.
this and still have a little bit of time for our discussion, but I want to just note, as a Maplewood resident who is someone who participates in this program, it has helped me offset my budget, because I realized, hey, my kids really don't need a full pound of sausage in their spaghetti, so I'm gonna buy half of that, use half of it, right? Like, it's really kind of helped me be more cautious on
Mhm.
food I'm buying, how I'm cooking, all of that, for I'm not just throwing it in the waste. And also just, to your point, Tara, I would be totally willing to opt in to purchase my own bags rather than get them free, if that means another neighbor who can't have that. And then it would essentially have me getting a smaller garbage bill or a
Yeah.
garbage cart, right? So then I'm offsetting that cost, but in a different way, if that makes sense. And so maybe something to consider for future is maybe
Yeah.
giving people the option to purchase the
Sure.
bags rather than just get them for free,
Yeah.
which is like, could be great, but just an option, like, yeah, I'll buy my bag this time.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
Just along the same note, you know, I get what you're saying that if you don't have the bags, you can't get less participation. But maybe start thinking about how do we over time
Yeah.
wean people
Totally.
from it?
Yeah.
And then couple that with more education
Yeah.
as part of the education program.
I would think that may be harder,
Mhm.
because when you start getting something free and someone stop, that's a whole problem. Besides, they say you can opt in if you need to get the
Right.
bags, right? Cause I'm not a believer that everybody needs a bag. You buy them a bag, right? And everything is not equal here.
I will, just quickly, your question about who's responsible on, recycling, and it is in Minnesota state statute that it's a county requirement. County shall ensure residents, including residents in single and multifamily dwellings, have the opportunity to recycle. At least one recycling center shall be available in every county. An opportunity to recycle, means availability of recycling and curbside pickup or collection centers for recycling materials. So it's up to the county to enforce that in multifamily. Which is why we're working to help. Yeah.
So that's our,
Probably
that's our
not a staff
environmental.
person.
so
We probably cut the staff
that
person.
enforces it then, yeah.
It's probably to our public health, I mean, we are the
Yeah.
public health commissioners.
Mhm.
Okay. It's our public health, okay.
It's looking at us like, yes, it is
Looking
on.
at people off.
It is.
Is it,
Yeah.
is it?
Yeah.
Ray?
So did I
We're
say?
you're doing the carrot approach,
Did I say
right
we
now.
supposed to give them one bag or at least one bag? What you said, 2 rolls? At least
2
2
rolls,
rolls.
that's enough for 2 a week.
Yeah.
More
I
like-
can't even picture this. A bag a week.
For
When do
your
you
for your organic.
your
organic
organic.
you pick up like what, once a month, every 2 weeks?
Like,
I
it
pick up
goes in
the-
your mine goes right in my
No,
garbage
right,
can
I'm
every
not-
week.
okay.
You
Yeah,
pick it
every
up
week.
every week in your garbage can.
Okay, so 2 rolls will last the whole year?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yes.
one roll can
One-
last if you use it once a week, yeah. I
You
only
can-
take my
It's
bag out
2
like
bags in
every
a
week.
roll, and there's 52 weeks a year, so that's 2 bags a
Yeah,
week.
I just
is
use one bag
convenient,
of-
But it's more than enough even for a
one bag
large
or 2
account,
weeks, yeah.
generally speaking. All
And then
right,
you throw in the garbage, you know.
Okay, so let's try to get through
Okay, we're
this.
gonna
Any
get
further
this.
questions unless they're absolutely necessary.
I'll get through these pretty quickly, so, only a few slides left. This one is the eco budget, education, communication, outreach. So this is the part of the budget that has all of those communications, engagement, outreach, all of that for all of our programs and for the facilities. So this is an area of the budget that is essential. So it's all of that behavior change, all of the promotion, everything, including education, like tours at the facility. All is funded through this area of the budget. Next one.
And
And so,
also just note that you guys combined this, because they used to be in separate lot budget
oh, crap.
line items previous years, so that the jump looks like it's a big increase, but it's really
Yeah.
being pulled out of the other
Yeah.
budgets to form its
Mhm.
own budget.
yes.
Correct.
Yeah.
So, yes, and one other note is in previous, like current year, this is called general outreach. We've renamed it education, communication, outreach, so it's a little more clear of what this is. And to the point you just made, this is where you'll see an increase, but the vast majority of it is that moving from food scrap budget to here. So you can see kind of what portion of this budget is for food scraps, that third line down. And then what portion of this budget is for the rest of R&E's education, communication, outreach services overall.
This is a question for County Manager Becker, and it might be a future answer. How does this communications budget compare to the communications budget for the entirety of the county?
Oh, we can look at that. Mhm.
Good question.
So as you can see, the vast majority of the increase here would be just that move of the food scrap portion to this section of the budget. This is also where we would be asking for 2 FTEs, communication specialists, again, kind of an entry level position to provide support across this team, including the food scrap pickup program, just to do so much of the work that we do, almost all the work that we do is revolves around behavior change. And so therefore we need a lot of outreach, promotion, marketing, communication, education, communication. So 2 FTEs would really increase our ability to do that work while also kind of reducing some of the dependence that we have on contracted vendors. And then these last 2 are really quick. These are the 2 sections of budget that don't directly fund programming. So program operations previously was called project management, but again, that didn't make sense. So we changed the name. And this is just essentially the part of the budget that funds all of the things that go into running the organization from a programmatic standpoint. So salaries, benefits, supplies, computers, all of that is budgeted here.
Yeah.
Exactly. And so all of those FTEs that I mentioned in the slides, I was mentioning where they'll be applying their capacity, but this is actually the part of the budget where they get the numbers, the money goes into the budget to fund those positions. And one note you'll see here of 2025 compared to 26, part of the reason why that jump is big is there's the FTEs we're requesting, but also there are 3 FTEs that the ARNI board approved in January of this year that have now been hired that are also included in the 26, 27, but they're not actually reflected in 25. The 25 number there is just what was approved originally. But we moved about $425,000 from last year's program's budget, rolled it into this year to pay for those staff. So that 425 is not reflected in that 3.559.
So in the slides that we've seen before, I'm seeing 5 FTEs is that in addition to the 3 FTEs that were approved? So it'd be 8 FTEs from starting in January.
So correct. So 3 FTEs were approved using rollover funds for 24. Those are already hired. Those are in 25. So we have them. And now in these 3 drafts, we're proposing either 6 additional or 4 additional, depending on the draft. Draft 1, the green one, has the 6 FTEs. Draft 2 and 3, it's only 4 FTEs because we would be removing that line item for the additional AD tonnage. And then
And all of those would be our responsibility on our side, not within the joint R&E budget. This would be.
No, this is joint.
This is all.
Everything here is joint.
Everything is joint.
Everything is joint.
Okay.
Yeah.
all this is through our.
Yeah, and those 3 FTEs that are already hired include Melissa Finnegan, who is our lobbyist, who has already delivered more than what we're paying her by about 10 times. In grants and other assets and protection. Deb Orth as my executive assistant and who manages all the programmatic stuff. And then one other program
That
assistant.
doesn't actually make us want it, like.
And
I'm just saying.
in our staff, we're
Yeah.
taking care of
I mean,
really.
someone just might say it. No.
Yeah.
I think
Okay.
org chart in the future would be helpful too, just to
Okay.
kind of understand the lines, like kind of some, because we were comparing,
Oh,
future.
yeah.
I'm just saying that
It
we
doesn't-
could continue
I
evolving.
think Deb just specify the quality of the people there. Yes, wonderful.
They have really big work and we're delivering all of this on behalf of Ramsey County. So we need the right people in place.
Last part of the budget, won't spend time on here. This is policy about, this is just contracted services for legal, engineering, technical services. And
Yeah.
as you can see, this isn't increasing much compared to 2025. And I think that is it. It'll just go to, so then this is just, again, that recap of 25, the 3 drafts, and then what the county contributions would be for each 3 drafts. And again, reminding that food scraps is the reason the increase is going up. And to compensate, all other programming combined are going down by about 24% to compensate compared to 2025.
This seems like a lot.
It is.
It seems like a lot. You got 262% increase on programming.
Just for that
Oh,
one.
just-
Just for that
Just
one
food
program.
scrap.
Just the food scrap.
Yeah, for food scrapping.
We're committed.
Committed.
We
have
haven't
to have
done
no
yet.
doubt.
have to.
There's no way.
And that's to get it into St. Paul though too, so that big jump.
Right.
from
You have
This
decision, but you don't, no.
Yeah, you can't stop that.
4% increase.
Commissioner McGuire,
Yeah, and I'm gonna
Yeah.
just hopefully just try to talk a little bit about this. I'm gonna channel Victoria a bit here, because some of us have been in this work for a long time. Since I've been here,
Yeah.
Raphael's been in it longer. We've had an issue with trash. We continue to have an issue with trash. I think we've been leading the country in how we deal with it, and organics is one of the keys. The state is getting into it. Internationally, they know this is a way to get at our trash is through organics. And so we committed to this program years ago where we've invested a lot of resources already. We've got contracts actually that require us to do this, and it's all for the good. It's all early intervention, prevention. I mean, it's all
Well,
that we
yes.
can do.
But I mean, Victoria, you can state mandate.
and
Right, thank you, and state mandate, so some of this, I mean, a lot of this, we don't even have any, I mean, right now, it's not part of our decision making, but I'm just so grateful that we have an R and E, department, an R and E, center, thank you. That's actually up to the task of what we're asking them to do. And I feel like we're at a crossroads that we need to make sure they have the resources to actually do the work that we're requiring them to do. I know we're gonna have a tough budget year and we're gonna be all looking at the bottom line, but this doesn't even affect our levy. Like this money is already, it's in our CEC. I'm confident we're not gonna reduce our CEC because we need this money, we need these resources to do this work. Feel like I'm speaking to the legislature. Don't cut us. We need to increase what we're doing, but we've asked the center to give us a budget that is lower than they wanted, and actually that's the green budget, that's actually lower than they wanted. And then I know people said, well, cut even more. I am very nervous about us cutting. You've heard my passion about getting these programs into our multi-units, getting these programs into our businesses. This is all work that we have to do, and we have to keep the momentum going. And I mean, if I didn't trust the work of this board, of this center, I wouldn't even be, so strong about it. But I know that this center can do this work, but we got to give them the ability to do it. And like I said, it doesn't affect our levy. I mean, it doesn't affect the levy of our people. We're not going to reduce our CEC because we shouldn't. And so I believe we should do this. I believe Washington County needs to step up, because this is work. If we don't do this work, we're gonna end up paying for it in other ways.
Yeah.
It's gonna end up coming back to us in way higher. And Washington County is gonna have to understand that as well. And it's not that big of it. I mean, it's all on our taxpayers, and I don't ever mean to not acknowledge that, but I think asking Washington then to come up on what they, were thinking, I think we should challenge them on it. I think we should say, we're gonna do this, we're gonna do the green budget and say, we believe in this, and we know you do too, and this is what we're gonna do. So that's my
Commissioner Jevonsing.
Yeah,
my
and
plea.
I'm gonna ask questions to speak again,
Yeah,
being new,
Yeah,
highly
you should.
technical.
Yeah.
So I'll just read, I'm gonna say something, you say yes, like I'm following
Yeah.
the little blue ball all the way
Yeah.
through. So is none of these, all of this budget is contained within its own revenue from the CEC and.
Correct.
the
Yes.
None of this is competing against any of our other levy gutters, yes or no?
Yes,
Yes.
We can't spend it on any other levy. We can't spend any of it on.
unless it's in our solid waste management
That's right.
plan.
Yes.
Be in your
So
solid waste.
so that's what's happening in Washington County. I
Yes.
staff could speak on my behalf.
Okay,
Their budget issues are that they're actually taking some of their. They're feeling, what they're doing. Like they're feeling budgetary pressures. So they're actually moving some of the funds into their solid waste plan, right? Is that correct?
Yeah,
in
they
that sense?
have, they're purchasing equipment and property using CEC funds that supports the solid waste plan that puts them really tight.
Mhm.
Doesn't mean they can't do it. They shared, Commissioner Miron told Commissioner Guar yesterday in front of me, Trista can speak on our behalf. They have pressures, they have the ability.
Okay.
And again, it is a decision of, do we invest here or here, but it has to align with the solid waste plans that both counties approved, and they are in alignment with each other.
And then the other question I have is knowing the age of our facility, is there any, within this budget of spending that, even though it can't be used for anything else?
Right.
Is there any, I mean, I guess one of the things that that you have your budget statement, you have your cost, you know, you have your different sides, like what's ongoing funds towards that reconstruction? I guess that's
Yeah.
part of my being so diligent on the
Mhm.
questions, even though that these aren't competing with our levy dollars.
Yeah.
Is the idea at some point,
They could.
there's going to be some kind of investment that's gonna have to be made. And so if there's any way that, you know, I just wanna just
Yeah.
throw that out there
Yep.
as deferred maintenance or other kind of facility issues
Yes.
to make sure that we're putting away for that inevitable rainy day.
Yep.
Is,
So what we have is what we call the EM&R fund for the facility. That's equipment maintenance and reserve fund for the facility. If there is surplus in this portion of the budget, it goes to fill the EM&R fund. Typically, the facility, it's an enterprise fund, so it's funding itself and is circular in itself. The part of this budget that helps the facility is in that, in the less waste we get, the longer the facility lasts, right? Because wear and tear on equipment, especially around bulkies, mattresses, because the wear and tear on equipment is huge. So we're working to be in circularity, and if there's any break in the wheel, either in programs or in the facility, the cost is gonna come bearing to life. So it is circularity. Yes, go ahead, just say it.
And so we have a robust capital improvement plan or capital repair plan, and you know, our facility will last for the next 20 years as long as we follow that plan.
Yeah.
And that's actually not this budget,
No.
not the program's budget.
Correct.
So
Well,
that's
except that if we
But-
fail at the program budget, we will
then we
have,
have to do that, right,
back
I
up
mean,
there.
right, they're two different budgets, but
they support each other.
yeah, they support each other.
So can I just say, I wanna, is there further discussion, before I close out? I just wanna add in that, I'm comfortable, the most comfortable budget that me personally as a new commissioner and someone who sits on the R&E Finance and Facilities Committee, can you tell?
Yeah.
You know, the cool things
Yeah,
I
yeah.
just knew.
That was good.
I mean, and also being a new commissioner, new to this budget as the whole county wise, I'm more comfortable with the draft 2 budget, just because I also want to be cautious that we did just open an environmental center. We do have costs that could associate with that. We do have other programs that fall under our solid waste fund planning or program or plan, also other areas and goals that we could explore for our CEC dollars as well. That's outside of this scope. So that's just where I'm at, but I fully agree with you, Mary Jo. I really believe, and that was one of my first questions to Trista at the, when this was presented to us. Well, what's the plan to get those programs back to what they were? And there's not, and that's hard for me to swallow, just because I see it as an equity thing. Who's living in those, what residents in our families are living in those multi-unit facilities, right? Like, and that's cutting programs and access to them. And that goes against one of our mission, one of our values, and personally mine as well. But I'm just gonna leave it at that. If there's any more,
Can I just say
Yeah.
the difference between draft 1 and draft 2 is $600,000 for Ramsey County.
Okay.
And your CEC can support it. And with the increased tip fee, that's gonna generate additional CEC, it will support it.
okay.
And it can't be used for anything outside. Right.
And
That's-
for Washington, what is it for Washington if we?
So
ask
the
them for
difference
one?
between the drafts
one.
from draft 3 to draft 1 is $600,000 for Washington.
For Washington County, so
It's not.
it's
That's what we're debating.
two, yeah.
Yeah.
And what can, what, so this is the enterprise fund, it's circular, these dollars have to be
Mhm.
used in a certain way.
Yes.
But it sounds as if you're, I guess, the definitions of what can be what those dollars can be spent is defined within
The solid waste management.
solid.
plan.
And are we being, I mean, given that we're in tough times,
Yeah.
like I used to come from a school district where our community ed services would get pilfered all the time.
Yes.
Pay for
Mhm.
teaching and learning because
Yeah.
one made money and one was lost money. So I mean, if things get really hard, we have to be
I
really.
get that.
So I guess, I mean, are there other like broader public health initiatives? Are there other kind of environment? Are there things that completely are within the guidelines, but that we haven't really really gone in depth that could save from other places because it could be housed here? I mean, I don't mean creative accounting. I mean, just the idea of like, are there things that could be housed in more than one places that could be housed here and appropriately use these funds?
From
that might-
CEC funds.
Yeah.
So that would be a question for your director, Amy Karen, not me, because I don't manage the whole environmental or the health fund. I would say it is defined very closely in the solid waste plan, but your solid waste plan is broad, I will say that, but it has to be defined in solid waste and the environment. So again, we're talking about dollar amounts that are about a third of your CEC budget. You still have 2/3 of your budget to use on all the other things. And yeah, so that would
Well,
be a
and,
question.
and it's not in any way to devalue or show my lack of support for all of these things. It's the idea that
Yeah.
we just know what kind of pressures we're gonna be under, and before we even start, I just wanna know where there possibly are, coins
Sure.
underneath the cushions,
Sure.
right? We just gotta be really broad in how we're approaching
Yeah.
everything.
I so
Commissioner
appreciate
McGuire?
that question, and I think we should always ask that question. I would just say that all of our communities and our schools and our businesses are all faced with this trash issue and recycling, and if we can help them with this, that will reduce their debt. This will help our communities in ways, if we can get it out to them in greater ways, like, we have a lot of work to do out there. And I'm thinking that our schools really wanna do this, they wanna do the organics. I don't think anybody's doing it to the extent that they can, and this will reduce their garbage costs, and it will just help so much, so. Yes, there may be other coins, I feel like we're just getting the stuff off the top of the cushions right now, but yeah. So, but worth asking questions.
Do you have something else?
Mm-mm, no.
Anybody else? All right, I'm going to close us out. So thank you guys. Here's a summary from today. So the R&E program budget focuses on upstream waste solutions with a strong emphasis on public health, environmental health, and mainstreaming landfill use. So the budgets we saw reflect significant investments to support the full rollout of the food scraps pickup program, which drives the largest year over year to year increase that we saw. That food scraps pickup program budget grows from, just how big it grows. Reflecting investments in collection, outreach, and staff. To balance this, we were presented with 3 different budgets. Programs budgets as biz recycling, community waste solutions, and education and outreach, and they were adjusted to really help meet the request that we had asked of the R&E. So in 2026, Ramsey County will continue to contribute 69% of the program budget compared to the 73% in previous years, aligning more closely with the actual
You
waste.
did say that.
Yeah, so this is the year that, that transition will take place, that we got 69% instead of 73. So Washington County, and I just want to note, draft 1 proposes a $17.4 million total budget for 2026, increasing to 19.3 million in 2027 with lower alternatives. Maybe we have it up there.
Yes.
So overall, the budget aims to maintain effective waste reduction programs while scaling new ones like the food scraps pickup program that will help us meet the 75% recycling goals by 2030. Did I miss anything?
Good notes.
It's a long day.
One thing I'll just add as County Manager Becker asked me is what are the next steps? So
Yeah.
on June 26th, so next week, the R&E board will come back together and hear the results of both of the workshops to make a decision on which budget they want to move forward. And then in July, it will be voted on by the R&E board. At that point, whatever budget is approved in July as the R&E board, it comes back to each county to put in their environmental health budget for CEC funds and then process through your regular county budget process.
Thank you.
Thank you. And at that, we are adjourned.
Thank you. Thank you for coming in.
And my little gavel.